For nearly 30 years, Todd Garner has overseen blockbuster films like Con Air, Anger Management, Triple X, 13 Going on 30, and Black Hawk Down.
Why are they letting you make these movies?
Join Todd as he shares tips and stories from the front lines of producing in Hollywood.
I'm Adam Sandler.
I'm Rebel Wilson.
Hey, I'm Rob Riggle.
This is Marlon Wayans.
I'm Eli Roth.
Hey, it's Ed Helms.
This is Shay Mitchell.
Hey, guys, this is Jeff Probst, and you're listening to The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide with Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
What a combination.
The good news about our business is that it's completely cyclical. I am a huge history nerd when it comes to the movie business and the television business. I love to read books about the way the business was in the 30s and 40s and 60s and 70s because it just makes me feel better. Because most of the time the press will say, the business is over. There's always the good news, but, and it's just always so negative. The cycle of this is dead. Comedy's over. Horror's dead. And that was a huge rhetoric a few years ago, was that horror was dead. Every horror movie was a huge budget, big swing. They were using all the big titles like Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street. The budgets were becoming pretty bloated, and the audience just didn't seem to be there. And so if you go back and look at all the press, it was a landslide of horror is done. Everybody was saying that horror was done. And in fact, go back and look at old interviews with Amy Pascal. At one point, she had done so many female-driven movies that seemed to not work that she actually went on the record saying female movies are kind of not what people want to see, and I shouldn't have made so many of them. They kind of backed her into that corner. And now, obviously, there was just a report that announced that female-driven movies are hugely profitable, way more profitable than movies with male stars. So everything is cyclical, and most of the time, anytime someone says there's a trend that's ending, they're wrong. My next guest, Jason Blum, has done that in a massive scale. Right when horror was done, he found a very small, very, very small movie that nobody wanted. He believed in it. He nurtured it. He fanned that flame, and he has created an empire from it. And he is one of the few producers, when you say their name, like Jerry Bruckheimer, Joel Silver, or David O. Selznick, when you say their name, you know the kind of movie you're going to get. And when you say Blumhouse, you definitely know you're going to get the crap scared out of you. More importantly, you know it's going to be quality, and you know you're going to see something that's not just cookie cutter, that pushes the boundaries of the genre. I have a fascinating conversation with him about all of those things, his history growing up in the art world and being in the early days of his career, having studio deals that did not work out well for him, to finding this little nugget and creating it into the empire he has today. Enjoy. All right. I'm here with Jason Blum. Hi, bud.
Hello.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy we're doing this. I'm such a huge fan of yours. I really am. And what you do, because what you do is f***ing hard.
Thank you.
And
we do.
Yeah, well, that's true. But you have done something, and I want to get into it, how you created it. But you've created something that's earth-shattering and spectacular, and it's really I'm just in awe of everything you've been able to do, and we've worked with a lot of the same people, you get great work out of everybody.
Not everybody.
You get work out of a lot of people, and that's just a testament to you and your commitment to the artist. So, speaking of artist, what does Ferris mean? Your dad owned a gallery called Ferris Galleries, and your middle name is Ferris.
Yeah, my dad named me after his business, which
F-E-R-U-S.
F-E-R-U-S. I spent a lot of time in therapy about it, but I've made peace with that now.
What does it mean?
Ferris. It's unclear. I think it was the name of like a very young, promising artist, but it also meant ferrous is like Latin for iron or steel. My mother had a different idea of what the gallery name was, and my dad had a different idea. None of them are very satisfying, clearly. So it was my dad's business. What he got the name from, I'm not entirely sure.
And was your dad always in the art business?
No, he was he was in the army. He was in the army in Korea, and then he was in he was a salesman at Knoll in New York.
Okay.
He sold furniture. He wanted to be an actor.
And have you put him in any of your movies?
No,
not even as like
no
a cameo?
longer interested in acting.
Damn it! I could have had like a scoop here. Your dad's name's Irving, correct?
And his name is Irving. Yeah, and then he moved to Los Angeles and joined the gallery.
It's so weird to me because you were born in L.A. the art gallery was in L.A. That seems so weird. Like, whenever I thought of you, I always thought of you as like a New York kid. Your dad owned a gallery in New York. Like, an art gallery in L.A., and especially like, and maybe this is an apocryphal story, but your dad bought all 32 Warhols. How the hell does a gallery in L.A., and clearly your dad is hugely entrepreneurial. It's a great story if it's true. How does your dad get all 32 Warhols to a gallery in Los Angeles from New York?
From New York, it is true. My dad showed a lot of the artists that Leo Castelli represented in New York in L.A. So he kind of was the co-dealer with Leo for a lot of his artists, and it is a great story, and it's a true story, and it's a real testament to my dad's eye and also to his conviction, which is something that is important to me, and something I definitely learned from him. So he had all the soup cans up, 32 of them. They were $100 a piece, so $200, and he kept 50 and he gave Andy 50 and $50 for everyone that he sold, and he had them up for a month, and after a month he had sold 6. Dennis Hopper actually bought one, and 5 other people bought them, and he had been living with them for a month in the gallery and looking at them, and he was really felt convinced that they should remain as a set. But he didn't have very much. He had very, very little money. He had no money, and so he called up Andy and he said, "Look, I've been sitting with these for a month. I've sold 6 for $600. So my cut is $300 and your cut is $300. But I think they should stay together as a set. And I would love to buy them from you. I can pay you. I think it was $2,000 over 2 years.
Wow.
Was what was the agreed upon price." And he went back
I love
to
that
this.
he didn't even give him the cash.
No,
it's just like, it's
$2,000
$2,000 and I'm going to pay you
give
monthly.
$60 a month or
That's
whatever.
amazing.
Yeah.
And was your dad always this way, super entrepreneurial and forward thinking? Because obviously it rubbed off. The apple does not fall far from the tree.
Well. But let me finish. So he had to go get the other 6.
Oh my God!
Because he had sold 6.
Right.
So he went to the people who went to Dennis and the other 5 people who had bought them, and they all hung them in their kitchen as like a joke. And he said, "Hey, would you mind if I gave you $100 back? Could I have the painting back? Because I think they should stay together as a set." And everyone was like, "Great." We rented the soup can for a couple weeks.
Right.
That was great. And he got them all back.
Wow.
And then he kept them together. I think one of the things I admire about my dad the most, and as you and I know, success has many fathers. So everyone. Morgan Neville, whose documentary? Do you see the Orson Welles documentary?
Oh, it's amazing.
Amazing. Yeah.
It's so much better than the movie. I hate to say it.
So I haven't seen the movie. It's not
sorry.
good.
It's not good.
He's a great
and I
filmmaker,
do think he is. Obviously, it's two of my favorite.
No,
movies.
Morgan
Oh,
Neville.
Morgan. No, for sure. And Orson.
No, Orson Welles is not bad. He's got. Clearly he knew what he was doing. But I think Morgan is terrific.
Amazing, because there's an interesting thing about that Orson Welles documentary is that Orson actually says on camera, maybe this movie is better as a documentary.
Yes.
Which is insane to me.
So funny. And it
absolutely
really is.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So Morgan Neville made a documentary called The Cool School, which was about the Ferris Gallery. And I guess I was bringing that up because success has many fathers. So there were a lot of amazing artists and paintings came through the Ferris Gallery. And there's among in the art world, from my point of view, there's a kind of big credit grab around it. And one of the things that I so admire about my dad in the category of actions speak louder than words is he had no money, and every time he thought something was great, he did whatever he could to buy it.
Right.
And so he put together this incredible collection, which speaks to the fact that he didn't just talk about believing in it, he acted on that belief. He thought that something spectacular, unusual, and special was really happening, and that he wanted to be a part of it, not only by introducing art to other people and making his living by selling it, but also collecting, which was very unusual for someone who had no money. So was very incredibly meanful to me.
Did that give you the freedom to chase what you've chased, to chase the art that you've chased?
I think it did. I think it definitely gave me. It definitely, it made me very comfortable in the arts, comfortable with artists, and comfortable with money, because he would be, a certain way with collectors and another way with artists,
right.
and watching, and what's kind of what we do, wearing two
right.
hats, and so it made me comfortable having a foot in both worlds. I think one of the big gifts I got from my dad is he always said you must keep the he always said his dad told him or something that you have to keep the key to your business in your own pocket. And I worked for other people till I was in my early 30s, until I was 30, and I always really wanted to have my own company. And my dad, that expression of my dad's always stuck with me. And I wouldn't have done it if it weren't for him, and I hadn't seen someone else have their own company and it worked out.
Well, yeah, the person who had the own company that you worked for was like the perfect person to teach you what not to do.
What not to do. That's true.
But to be fair,
but my dad had his own. What I meant is when I was growing up in New York, my dad had his own. The guy and his hours he could do himself, and you get to write not all your own rules, but a lot more of your own rules than if you have a boss.
Right.
And so it was very impactful to see that as a kid.
But that's also when you started Blumhouse. So let me back up for a minute. You graduated from Vassar in 1991.
Mm-hmm.
Were you knew that you wanted to be in the movie business then, or because you were surrounded by great art, you were surrounded by creative people? It seems logical that you would have this idea fairly early on. Do you remember the lightning strike moment? Was it a movie or something?
The lightning strike moment was it was a reaction to and an embrace of my parents, which was I remember it very specifically, which is that I used to think like I love. In the 80s and 70s, and then it started to be less so in the 90s and 2000s, but it's certainly in the 70s and 80s and prior to that, the art world was tiny and very rarefied and very elitist. It still is very elitist, but it's a little more mainstream now. When I went to boarding school, I picked photographs of the art that my dad was showing in the gallery. People would make fun of it. People make fun of non-representational art. So I very much had this voice in my head of I want to be in the arts, but I want it to be for a mass audience. Right. To really appreciate art, you have to have taken art history, and I wanted to be in the arts where you didn't need any formal education. You could just enjoy it, and that's what led me to movies. Really.
What did you study at Vassar?
I studied film and economics.
Me
so
too.
It was good. No, you're kidding.
I swear to God. I went to Occidental, such a liberal arts college. So I have a degree in economics and art. They didn't even have film.
Wow, amazing.
And
we had a film. It was a theater major, but it was a film like concentration.
I changed it from a theater major because I go, I've never been in the theater, so they changed it to art. And I'll tell you this, it's so funny what you just said, because if I could go back, I would be an English and art history major. I would love to read more.
I would too.
Economics was, by the way, totally useless in my life.
I would too. I never finished I tried to be a double major. I didn't finish it, but I took a lot of economics classes. My major was theater.
It's interesting because I've heard in interviews you say you didn't really have a particular thing for horror when you were younger. But I will say I've interviewed a lot of people, filmmakers, and I say, what was the what got you? And I'll say 90% say it was like The Exorcist or some scary movie that they watched when they were a kid.
That got them inspired.
Yeah, because
to be
their dad went, "You're 9,
Amazing.
you can watch The Exorcist," or whatever it was.
Amazing.
And or the Halloween, the first one.
Right.
And they were so terrified. They went, the fact that a film can do this to me made them want to do it, even if they don't do horror.
Right.
So I would imagine you are going to up thousands of generations from now on with all the movies you've made that are going to inspire lots of filmmakers. Do you remember the movie that inspired you as a kid where you're like, holy shit, I want to do that?
There wasn't a single movie. I mean, I watched The Wizard of Oz every year with
which
my
is
mom,
terrifying, by the way.
Which was really scary. Oh,
yes.
That was terrifying. That was incredibly scary.
Do you remember how old you are?
I was too young. I do remember.
Yeah,
it was it. I was too young.
Filmmakers.
When we grew up, you watched it once a year when it was on network TV. You didn't get to watch it. There was no videotape, so we watched it. I watched it every year with my mother, but I do very specifically remember my mom grew up in this little town called Dobbs Ferry in Westchester, and we had this little house that we lived in, and there was one TV, and we had a fold-out couch. On a special night, we would do the fold-out couch and watch TV, and we slammed the TV for the first 20 minutes because of the black and white. We thought it was brilliant.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, that's a good movie to inspire you, because I do feel like that is
time.
This is what we're here for.
Yeah.
So I will say that it's just being moved, and I've also read a bunch of stuff about you, and I had never thought of it before, and I don't know why, but when you talk about making the movies that you make, you're making independent movies. You're not making horror movies. You're making movies that you say should get into Sundance or win Academy Awards, which you've obviously been nominated for 2 with Whiplash and Get Out. And all of your TV stuff has been phenomenal. And so did that come from Harvey? How did you, because you worked for Harvey Weinstein, so how did you get that acquisitions job working at, it was the Weinstein Company or was it Miramax when you started?
It was Miramax.
Okay,
it was
so
1996.
How did you get that job?
One person. Her name is Amy Israel, and she's an exec. Do you know her? She's an executive at Showtime.
Yeah.
And Amy had a job in acquisitions at Miramax, which I think she got in early, like 93 or so. And I worked at a company called Arrow Entertainment, which was a much smaller distributor. And we went to all the film festivals together. And Amy really just felt badly for me. There were 20 executives from Miramax at the festivals. There was one of me, so I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't know what rights available. I didn't know anything. So
and there's
Amy
20 Miramax executives, so nobody was getting anything done but them.
Yeah. So yes, exactly. But Amy would point me in like, look, this is a good movie. You should see it. It's available. It's in the price range. We're not buying it. Like the Miramax runoff. But even more than that, in the beginning, she really helped me through a very difficult time because I just was doing something I just was way over my head. And after 2 or 3 years going to festivals together, there was an opening at Miramax, and Amy 100% brought me in, introduced me to Harvey, and we had a meeting in Cannes, and it was 1995 or 96. And the way that I got the job, it was a 5-minute interview on the deck of some hotel in Cannes. And
I'm sure it was the Ducap.
No, it wasn't. It was in
downtown?
town.
Oh,
It was across from the Palais.
Right.
And anyway, I had just bought Band of Queen. Remember Shaker Kapoor's Band of Queen? That was his first movie, and it was filmed for. It was this guy Bill Stevens who was selling it, and Band of Queen was.
Were you still working at Arrow at the time?
Yes, I was working at Arrow, and Band of Queen was introduced at MeFed, I think, and it was. I saw it there, and everyone went to go see it, like Miramax and all the companies that could afford it. And he was asking $500,000, which at the time for a subtitle movie for you, it was crazy, and no one bought it. And then he took it to AFM. Used to be after MeFed in March, and no one bought it there, and then no one bought it at Cannes. Or I may have my markets wrong, but anyway, it went around for 9 months at 3 markets without being sold, and we bought it for $75,000. I guess it was earlier because we'd already bought it, and I told Harvey that story, and he was like, "You're hired."
Perfect.
That was it. So I went to work with him, and like I said, it was 100% Amy who was responsible for that.
But during that time, so besides the fact that Harvey is, obviously everything's well documented about his abuse of people, it must have shaped you in a profound way of watching movies. Just being inside that system at that time, the most powerful independent company that the world had ever seen, going to a festival, just besides him bullying, just the fear of you guys walking into a room, the acquisitions execs from Miramax, because nothing happened until you guys saw the movie, right? So I remember I was in 95, 96, 97, I was in Disney at the time, and I remember when I became high enough where my execs would go, "We want to go to Sundance." I'm like, "You can go, but you're not buying anything there." So just go and meet people and meet the filmmakers. But Harvey's, I'm not going to piss off Harvey. We bought Miramax. We're not going to do it. But go, because that's how bad it was. And nobody would make a deal unless Harvey or you guys had seen the movie. So in terms of your quote of making independent movies and making sure movies would stand even if they didn't have the genre and the scares, how did that shape you during that time? Because you were there for quite a while.
Yeah, I was there for about 4 years. It shaped me a lot. I mean, it shaped me like yours. It shaped me a lot of ways. And really, I remember when I was there, like, learned these are things like I would do, and I always thought if I had my own company, these are things I really wouldn't do. I thought there was an enormous amount of wasted time. I always thought that. One of the things I kind of pride myself on is I'm good at some things, not at others, but I'm very efficient. I'm good at efficiency. And I always thought there was an enormous amount of there'd just be these arguments that would go on for weeks over the one tiniest detail in a movie, which didn't. And by the way they were resolved 50% of the time it was right and then was wrong. And
talking about creatively or business?
Creatively.
Okay.
Creatively. So that's just one example.
Harvey would dig in on a filmmaker.
Over little things, and I just remember thinking, but now whatever. Anyway, it shaped me in a lot of ways. But what it really did was Miramax was kind of a bridge between studio and independent, and that's what the company is now today. Is we make films independently and released by studios.
Yeah.
And so, sure, definitely, I'd inform that, and I think the movies are. I like to think our horror movies. I always say to the filmmakers, if you take out all the scares, do they work as a drama? Would they work as a Sundance indie drama? I think that's what makes some of them really good. Is that they work dramatically without being scary.
For sure.
And then the scares are even scarier.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think that obviously you have tremendous franchises in The Purge and Insidious and now Halloween, I'm sure, going forward. And all of those movies, I feel, especially the first Purge specifically, like even if it wasn't a horror movie, that thing works as a thriller straight up. And by the way, so does the Night Shyamalan movies. And so I would imagine that did Harvey at the time have like a separate bar? Like what caught his eye? Like what was the thing that turned his head during that time? As an acquisitions exec, you're coming in. By the way, you famously got a cigarette thrown at you for missing a movie. So when you bought a movie or you recommended a movie, the bar was high because you're literally running through a gauntlet to try to get it bought. What would you do? What would be the thing that turned his head?
Well, here's how it worked. So. A couple of things. The first thing is that our job was more complicated than you described because if everyone waited for us before they bought the movies, to see what we would do, it would have been easy. But the problem is Harvey had a lot of enemies too.
Oh.
So there were a lot of people who wouldn't sell to him or weren't would try not to sell to him, and our job was really simple. Our job was no movie would be bought by any kind of mainstream distribution company that Harvey had not either seen or had been made aware of. That
was good. Or just anyone.
Any movie.
Wow.
So if any other distributor...
You had to see everything.
Oh, we had to see it, analyze it,
Wow.
raise it to his attention.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so that was the job. So if Gramercy bought a movie that had not been on his radar at some point, we were in trouble. So that was a big. I mean, it was big. They were big marching orders. And then the second thing is it puts way too much. It gets us way too criticism. You bought a movie like he made the choices of what was bought and was not bought. Our job was to sort out the good from the bad and anything we thought was on the edge or good to put in front of him to get him to look at.
So walk me through a typical day in 1997 Miramax, you being an acquisitions exec.
I lived on Bank Street and in West Village, and we worked on Hudson. So I would pick up my friend Erica Steinberg, who lived right around the corner, like on Jane Street, I think, and we would walk down Varick, and we had a big, heavy cell phone. And luckily, because we were on the East Coast, that was kind of late. It was like maybe 9 o'clock, so we could get started kind of late. And we would walk and chat on down to 99 Hudson, and then chaos would begin. There was no rhythm to the day once we were there because the acquisitions department was really built around the festival. So we were getting ready, festival prep.
And what did that mean? Just talking to the agent, saying, "What do you got coming out?"
And we would have to, for the festivals, and I'm sure the companies still do this. We would have to meet with every single director who had a movie in the festival, so that if we liked it, we had a pre-existing relationship.
Wow.
Yeah. So
would you have to see the movie before you had these meetings?
There was an enormous amount of pressure to try and see the movies early, and sometimes people said yes, and some people said no. But there was big pressure to see everything early. Mark Ordesky was at Fine Line at the time, and he was very good at getting early looks. But there was always a kerfuffle about who was going to get to see the movie first.
Walk me through like the craziest acquisition you had with Harvey. Like, what was the one where you saw it, you brought it to his attention, and then it was just an all-out bloodbath, and you got it, or didn't get it, and got a cigarette on it?
Probably Happy Texas was probably that.
Wow.
That was. But the guy we were buying that from, in the middle of the negotiation, he went to the bathroom and threw up.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It was intense. Cassie and Elwes did the deal of the century on that. I think we paid about 4 times more than his highest second offer. So kudos to him. He really
His
pulled a
name-
wing dinger over on us on that one.
His name is mentioned so much. I got to get him on here.
He was
Everybody- had his finger
in that,
in
at
everything
that moment.
time.
He was
100% still does.
Yeah, still does. But when he was a sales agent or as a producer, he could do more. So he
Yeah.
had a lot of
That's amazing.
There were a lot. I had a little black. It was before you kept your schedule on an electronic thing. I had a little black book, which was my schedule, and I wrote down every movie or script. And I said I was there 4 years, and I had bought. It was 75. Either books, scripts, but mostly finished movies.
Wow.
75 deals in that time.
I mean, when I would go to Sundance, that book of screenings was so daunting. How would you get through it? You
was amazing.
you just wake up and go to movies all day, and then just be calling in and saying,
At Sundance, we did crazy stuff. We don't do this. You can't do this anymore because it's digital, but it was film. So we would rent out used to rent the Egyptian, and then I'm telling all the secrets. It doesn't matter anymore. Rented the Egyptian, and then we rented. There's that town Huber City,
yeah.
Heber. What's it called? Heber.
Yeah.
There's a movie theater in Heber. So we bought that theater out for a week, and we'd pull all prints. And it'd be an endless negotiation. Watch them simultaneous with the public screening, or can we start an hour earlier? It would just be a crazy thing. And we would if we saw movies that we liked, we'd get the prints, and we'd start at 5 a.m. at the Egyptian or in Heber and watch these movies. The movies that we liked, and we'd show them to Harvey, and that Harvey was. He still is, but he was so he didn't want to go to the screenings, understandably, because as soon as he went, everyone would go crazy.
But so
he'd watch all the movies.
He preferred watching without the audience.
Oh yeah.
Which I think, can I tell you something? Don't you see that in Sundance? I think it's the altitude, a combination of the altitude and the alcohol and the timing.
Totally.
People buy movies for
Happy
so
Texas,
much money.
or Hamlet 2.
He has so much money.
Hamlet 2, it's crazy.
And they never work.
They
rarely work.
It's a great exercise, which I used to carry around. My dear friend John Sherman used to do this with me. I used to carry around in my wallet all the time the acquisition prices of the top. It used to only be 10 or 15. Now it's more movies and then the gross.
Right.
It's to your point. It's 10% of the movies acquired at Sundance.
People come out of that midnight screening with their hair on fire.
The problem where the economics get so screwed up is they're financially successful for a lot of people, but not the buyers. Right?
Exactly. Because you're putting all that P&A into it.
Yeah. But and the people get through 2 or 3 times the negative cost. The lucky ones, most don't sell or sell for a little amount of money. But the economics are crazy at a film festival. That's why it's better to watch it alone, because you're not affected by that.
Exactly. Because I can imagine on a midnight screening, people are hammered up in the altitude. People are cheering for 10 minutes.
Looks incredible.
And then
it's the greatest thing ever. What is this? And half the audience in the library is the cast and crew anyway.
And you can't cut a 30-second spot. So you're like, what the f- is this?
This is The Producer's Guide with Todd Garner.
Okay, so you go from being an acquisitions executive directly to being a producer? And was your first deal on the Paramount lot? How did that happen?
No.
Wow.
I no, God, no. So Amy and I left together January 30, December 31st, 1999, or January 1st, 2000, the millennium. And we started our company, a production company, and the first company that we had was called Blum Israel, and Blum Israel was at 8900 Wilshire. We also had offices in New York.
So you moved from New York right away back to L.A.
Yeah, hard to say back because I hadn't really been here since I was 5. But I moved back to LA. Yeah, sure. And and we started Blum Israel. Blum Israel had a first look with Miramax, and it's kind of a nightmare.
These are the best stories.
It
can't all be Halloween.
No. Most of it was not Halloween and Split. Believe me. I mean, that's Halloween and Split wouldn't happen if all these other things hadn't happened.
True, exactly.
So. I mean, it was extraordinarily difficult for lots of reasons. First of all, to say you were running the acquisition department in New York at Miramax in 1999, which I didn't realize this, and then to go with a producer with a first look deal with Miramax, which I thought would be great. It's literally like going from sports analogies are not bad, except to say professional league to the fucking Pop Warner. We were the bottom of the bottom.
Every studio president that's ever lost their job went from incoming 300 phone calls to
no one.
0. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. So it's a version of that. I wasn't as big. It wasn't as big as studio president, but it was close.
Yeah.
And certainly with agents, the 2 agents who I will always remember for the rest of my life, who returned my call as quickly as when I had the job were Robert Newman and Chris Andrews.
Wow.
They were the two who returned my call.
I got to say,
by the way, the only two.
Two of the best guys, by the way. Robert Newman at the time had the most incredible independent. He still does, by the way.
And he had a long relationship with Bob and Harvey, so he was very long. So
I mean, just
we
Guillermo
talked to
del
him a
Toro,
lot.
Robert Rodriguez, the list goes on and
Right.
on and on. And
Right.
Chris Andrews has probably every great actor, for the last
many.
10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody from Emily Blunt to John Hamm, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And so those aren't too bad ones that return your calls, but it is disconcerting when no one else will.
No one, and it was. Look, I made so many mistakes in my career, but one of the biggest mistakes I made is I never should have left as early. We left too early. I just, like I said, to my dad, that thing, keep your business in your own. I just wanted to have my own thing and be my own company. I just didn't know what that meant, and if I had to do it over again, I definitely would have stayed longer. My uncle was an investor in the company. So it was actually my uncle and Harvey kind of split the overhead. There wasn't a lot of overhead, but they split the overhead of the company. And it just was not what I had hoped.
Was it a first look deal, or were you exclusive to Miramax?
It was very clearly we got totally outmaneuvered and out-negotiated because, Harvey wanted us to stay. We didn't want to stay. So he did this deal, which basically tied us up, so we couldn't really do much of anything else. But they didn't have any intent. I mean, Harvey might have, but it was John Gordon and Meryl Poster, and they had a great production unit running. They didn't need another set of producers to. It was made in such a cockamamie way that it's no fault to John and Meryl, but they didn't. We were never going to. Blum Israel was never going to produce movies for Miramax. That was such a joke.
Right.
But somehow we were deluded into thinking that would happen.
How long did that deal last?
It lasted 2 years.
Oh,
it was a
God.
2-year deal, and within 18 months, it was clear it wasn't going anywhere. And then I was living in the El Royale. And I had this crisis, which I had many times from 2000 to 2000. Basically, from 2000 to Paranormal Activity, I had the same crisis over and over. Brian Lord, who's always been my kind of mentor and has guided me through every difficult situation I've been in professionally, some personal too, but professionally. And I always would bore him with this conversation of should I be an executive again, or should I keep going on my own? Should I be an executive, or should I keep going on my own? And that was what I really struggled with.
Right.
And when I left, I could have gone to take a job after that, and there was something always burning inside me saying, "Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it." And then I remember when I was 33, it was 2003. I made $37,000 that year. I set up one thing at Miramax. I got a half of a $12,000 development fee, right?
They don't even do those
$12,500.
anymore,
They don't
right?
do those anymore. And then I did. I got one $25,000 fee on this little tiny, the first kind of independent movie I actually produced by myself.
What was that called?
It was initially called Easy Six, but our friends at Showtime, who we sold the movie to, changed the title to Easy Sex. Okay. Not one of our better movies, but it was very low budget, So I was on my own. I was working at. I made a joke. I was going to call my company Underpants Productions because I was working in my apartment in my fucking underpants. That's not a pretty image. And anyway, I was trying to what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And in 2004 or 5 or whenever the Weinstein Company started, I got the offer to run production at the Weinstein Company, and it was for 3 times as much money as ever made. I was going to get to move back to New York, which I've wanted to do for 20 years since I moved here, unsuccessfully. And I was like, I'm doing this. I was in. I didn't agree to it. But I had the offer, and Brian said, "That's great. It's terrific. But before you accept that, you need to meet my friend Brad Gray, who just started at Paramount." Well, clearly I'd never met before. I didn't even know who he was. And so I met Brad. I was at the LRA. I walked to Paramount, which they thought was so weird when I got to the guard gate. Right. And I didn't have a car, and I'm here to see Brad Gray. They were like,
Uber, so
they thought they were looking for a gun. And I sat down with Brad, and we had this incredible meeting because it was set up, by Brian so brilliantly. I was, Brad and Harvey had been rivals, and Brad was going to, this first thing he was going to get to do is steal Harvey's guy, right? So I could have said, it didn't matter what the hell I said. Like, I was getting that offer, right? So we had he said, what could you do to fix the food at Paramount? I said, I don't really know. You're probably in a better position than I am to do that. And as soon as I got out, it was like, what does he want? We have to have him at Paramount. It was kind of great. So what happened is, he first offered me a job. I said, "Look, I don't want a job. So if I take a job, I'm going to go take a job for Harvey, not you, because I know him. I don't know you. But what I've always wanted is a first look deal on the studio. That's what I thought I always wanted. Was with a golf cart like I want. And Brad said, "Great,
Have it all.
you got it."
Wow. Wait, hold on. I got to unpack a couple things first, because this is where I just get geeked out. Okay. First of all, how the hell Brian Lord is one of the founding partners, of the Young Turks of CAA.
Yes.
Art, how the hell do you connect?
Great question.
How did you connect
My
with Brian
first
Lord?
job, we skipped this part of the history. I graduated in 1991. I moved to Chicago. I was in Chicago for a year. My roommate was Noah Baumbach. We got Kicking and Screaming, that movie, up and kind of going. And then I moved to New York.
Did I hear this right, that you had a letter from Steve Martin?
That's what got the movie made.
What the hell?
That was a great story, too. So many great stories. What do you want to know?
No, we're just going to keep rewinding. So Kicking and Screaming with Noah Baumbach. You had your dad was friends with Steve Martin.
Steve was a collector, and my dad, which is one of the coolest things he ever did, calls up Steve Martin, who's his client, and says, "Can you read my son, who's this 22-year-old nitwit, right? Is like his friend wrote this script. They went to Vassar. Would you read it?" Which is kind of amazing if you think about that. And more amazing, he read it. And more amazing, he loved it, which was incredible. And he wrote this incredibly complimentary letter of the script, and we were going to ask him to invest or ask him to play a part in it or whatever. And I never met Steve. Had never met him before. And I called him. I was shaking on the phone. And I said, we were going to ask you to do this or that, but would you mind if I just showed other people the letter? And he said, show the letter to anyone you want. He said, I really thought this script was great. I wish you the best of luck. I'm not going to be in it, which is what someone told me to ask him that.
Right.
So we ripped off the cover page. We slapped on that letter. And that is what got Kicking and Screaming made. We gave it to Sandollar, this guy Joel Kasselberg, who I don't think is in the business anymore. Anyway, Steve Martin got the movie made.
Okay, so you're in Chicago. How do you meet Brian Lord?
Okay, so I moved back to New York in '92, and I was working for Arrow. Was going to finance Kicking and Screaming, and they at the end of I had actually applied to the Peter Stark program and the USC program, UCLA Producers program. I got in. I was going to go, and then this company Arrow said, "We'll give you a job doing acquisitions," and that's when Amy Israel kind of helped me out, right? So when I was at Arrow, that was my day. I was a real estate agent first. That's very important. I sold cable TV in Chicago, and then I was a salesman, and then I got my real estate license. I was a real estate agent.
It's all applicable, man. You're still selling.
Very applicable, exactly. But so I turned in my real estate. Actually, I didn't. I continued to do a little real estate on the side, but I was working at Arrow, and at night I produced a theater company in New York called Malapart.
With Ethan.
And this was Ethan and Frank Whaley and Steve Zahn and Callista Flockhart, and John Sherman was our great writer, and Robert Sean Leonard, and a bunch of great Josh Hamilton, a bunch of amazing actors, and it was really, really fun. And my mom would say it felt a lot like the Ferris Gallery scene.
Oh, that's cool. And Ethan Hawke's going to play a big part in a minute here in your story.
Yes, he did, because Ethan Hawke was represented by Brian Lord.
There you go.
And Brian would come to our little shows at Theater Row Theater. Amazing. And that's how I met Brian Lord. So it was 1992.
And then more insanely, you got Ethan to do The Purge, and that sort of started off your whole thing with, look, you're going to Ethan did it, so you're going to invest it with it like every other actor.
Yes, but the first movie that Ethan and I did together was Hamlet.
Oh, right.
Which I was executive producer on. It was one of the few movies I actually got to make at Miramax as opposed to buy.
Right.
So
Brian Lord sees in you that you're a go-getter, that you're a smart person, that you've got great taste, and then you go to work for Harvey. I'm sure that you ran into Brian and negotiated with him a number of times.
That makes me a way loftier thing. I had small interactions with him.
Brian is a fantastic person to have in your corner. And now this brings me back all the way to you walking onto the Paramount lot.
Okay, right.
So
I walk on the lot.
One second.
It's a great
great lesson, because you were being sold. You weren't selling, and you didn't even know it. Brian had set it up where Brad's like, and I love Brad, may he rest in peace, and I worked with him a lot because I had a lot of comedies, and I obviously did a lot of stuff with Brooklyn Gray.
Right.
And so
of course.
he wanted you. And it's so funny because anytime Neil Moritz and I talked about this, and we've talked about this a number of times, like when you go into a meeting and you're desperate and you're trying to sell somebody,
it's game over.
It's game over.
Yeah.
But if you go in, you go, well, this person needs a movie, and I have a movie, and why wouldn't they want my movie?
Yeah.
Or this person needs an executive, and I'm the great executive. Why wouldn't you?
And
want
I
me?
didn't want anything
That's
from
great.
Brad.
That's
I wasn't
great
doing
advice.
anything. I was definitely not going to Paramount. Like there was no chance I was going to Paramount. Like I had this great gig in New York that I was psyched to go back to. Like I was in. So I had none of that, you know.
Was the golf cart the kicker?
It was a big part of it, believe
What
me.
office were you in on the Paramount line?
I had the sickest offices. So here was the issue, though.
Okay.
Here's the issue. This is good for for this podcast because it's so inside. I love how inside this is. So I got what I always dreamed of, which was I got a first look deal. I had crazy amounts of overhead. I had three or four executives. I had 3 assistants. I had a f***ing golf cart. I had this incredible offices that are all chopped up into little offices now. It's where the daycare used to be at Paramount. I forget the name of the building. Anyway,
were you in the Lucy Bungalow?
I think that was it.
That's
Was it
right.
the Lucy
Those are my
Bungalow?
offices now.
Seriously?
Yeah.
On the second floor?
I was on the first floor.
On the
People
first
come and
floor.
go, I think Jason Blum was in here. And I'm like, oh, good. I hope
right.
the fucking mojo rubs
You were
off
on the
me.
first floor.
I'm on the first floor with the brick buildings that Lucy designed.
So I think that was, but that was the second floor.
Well, you might have been the second floor.
They were all cut up after. All right. So anyway, just to give you an idea, and you will really.
I'm sorry. What was your company called?
Blumhouse.
It was called Blumhouse
By
then?
this point, as soon as I left Blum Israel, it was called Blum. So by 2002, it was Blumhouse. Yeah, it was
Why?
Blumhouse. Because Frank Whaley, who I met at Malapart when we used to play basketball, used to make fun of me when we were playing basketball and just be like, Blumhouse scores!
Oh, there you
it was
go.
a total joke.
Perfect.
And when I named it, it was a lark. It was a
that's
complete
amazing.
lark. And it was Frank Whaley, who he's totally the
Is your child's middle name Blumhouse?
Not yet.
I'm just saying it's a family thing, apparently.
I should do it.
Okay, so Blumhouse in the Lucy Bungalow.
You will appreciate this.
Yes.
I came from independent film. When someone said territory in independent film, they're talking about countries. They're saying UK, France, what territories do you want? You understand?
Mm-hmm.
That's what they meant. Agents would send scripts and say, what territory? And I'd say, what are you talking? It's not even made yet. I mean, worldwide distribution. What do you mean
want it
territory?
all.
I want it all.
I want them all.
Territory? I mean, what are you going to make 5 versions of the movie? I didn't even know that territory meant what studio do you want,
Yeah.
right? So I not only had I not ever produced a studio movie, I'd never set one up in development.
Wow.
Ever. So I had no idea what I was doing. And I was kind of back a lot of ways. I was back in that situation that I actually had with Blum Israel, which is like Brad Gray threw me. Then I met Gail, who was equally supportive.
Gail Berman, who was the president of production.
Who had just been hired, yeah. And I
Who, by the way, had never developed a feature either. She came from television.
Yeah,
So you
right.
guys
So we were fine.
Yeah, we were all in good,
we were
good stead.
So, and Gail was very equally supportive. She blessed it. I got in my offices, but then it was, I forget who was running production first.
Was it DeLine?
It was right after DeLine.
Weston?
Ali Shermer, but
Ali
it was
Shermer, Brad
before.
Weston?
But it was before. No, there was someone before Brad, wasn't there?
I don't know.
Anyway,
I think it was Donald.
It was Donald and Ali and Brad, and it was Ali and Brad. It was mostly Ali and Brad.
Okay.
In any case, they didn't. I don't know. They didn't. Brad Weston worked with me at Dimension, but he didn't know me as a producer. He didn't want
Ali was
anything
an
to do with me.
exec at
And
Disney.
Ali was a dear. God bless her. Was
Yes.
a dear friend of mine, but that doesn't make you, she was like, shoot, my development budget is cut. A big piece is going to Blumhouse. What have these guys done? So it became clear within it was a 3-year deal, 3-year non.
First look, yeah.
Yeah, but exactly. But they couldn't stop it. It was just
Yeah.
3 straight years.
Great.
And, great, except like within 18 months, it became very clear that I was never going to do anything at Paramount. I mean, it was a joke. It was a joke. I mean, it was a joke. It was actually very difficult. And I made the Tooth Fairy at Fox, and that was the one big studio I got to make was the Tooth Fairy at Fox. And the reason that I Made it
Dwayne.
at Fox with Dwayne The Rock Johnson and
Charty and Gray, right?
And Charty and Gray,
Yeah.
yes, and we all had fun in Vancouver together. but it was very frustrating to basically not get my calls returned, and it's only in Hollywood. You can understand, and your listeners, but only in Hollywood, where you be getting paid all this amount of money to bring a company material that literally didn't want to talk to you. It was crazy. And when they bought DreamWorks, I remember very specifically, I felt guilty about getting all the money. I'm like, and I was determined, if nothing else, the $5 million that they gave me over 3 years, I was going to make that back for them.
Right.
Like that, I was going to make it happen no matter what.
Right.
I don't know. It comes from my mom, too.
Have you always thought of yourself as an entrepreneur, or were you more comfortable just sort of seeing yourself as an artist?
No, definitely an entrepreneur.
Okay.
No, definitely an entrepreneur.
Great.
I'm not an artist. I leave that to the directors. I'm totally not an artist. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a curator of artists.
Did you call yourself that in these times? Did you know you were an entrepreneur, or were you just floundering?
No, I don't think I call myself, but I've done everything always like the fact that instead of waiting tables, I was selling cable TV,
Right.
or instead of doing whatever dumb job, I was a real estate agent. Like clearly that's in my blood. And by the way, we're segueing again, but those jobs are crucial to the way I run Blumhouse, which is I've always bucked at the idea of getting paid by the hour. I always say I would rather get paid on commission for things I achieve, because I always think I could do more that way, right? So I was like, pay me when I work. And our movie business is that way.
Yeah.
Don't pay me unless we make money on the movies. I don't want a fee. I think I can make more if the movies really work. But if they really work, you got to pay me a lot.
Okay, so this is a perfect segue to Blumhouse, to the Blumhouse we know now. How does Paranormal Activity come into your universe?
Well, okay, but let me go back because it goes.
It's your time.
It plays into. Well, it plays into this.
Yes.
I was determined to get Paramount's $5 million back. I was determined to make my therapist would tell you too determined, right? I was determined to make Brian Lord's word good, right? Brian said, "This guy's a star. You should do this," and I'm like, "I'm going to show them. But that's hard to do when they're not returning your calls. But Paramount buys DreamWorks, and DreamWorks just knew me it was very interesting. Just knew me as a guy who had a first look deal with Paramount. So clearly they were someone that they had Paramount stamp of approval. I didn't tell DreamWorks that Paramount thought I was an idiot or just didn't think about me. I didn't rate. It wasn't that they actually that's too much of a compliment. It's just I didn't rate at all. So DreamWorks would actually engage with me. And DreamWorks would read things, and I did a few come to development deals, and Adam, and I had the relationship with DreamWorks that you would think I would have had with Paramount, right?
Adam Goodman being the president of production.
Adam went there, and Ashley and Stacy, but I really felt like I felt supported by this company, and I didn't tell them that they were like, yeah, I just
once again, it's the advice. It's the people that want you because they think you have some magic, and you're not going to dissuade them of the fact, which is great.
No. So I don't know if we want to go. I mean, I'm going to tell. I'll tell you can decide where you want to kind of dissect the paranormal story. I mean, a lot of people have heard it. I don't know if it's boring to everyone, but I'll tell it as it relates to the story I'm telling now. Okay. So I get Paranormal Activity as a directing sample from CAA. He's being hip pocketed as a client by Brian Kavanaugh Jones, and the movie is basically sold to DVD for $150,000. I see the movie. I had. We had passed on Blair Witch at that time, and I was really internalized that experience in a big, big way. It was really dumb, and I didn't think it was going to be Blair Witch, but I thought, wow, this could really work. I put it up in front of an audience. Anyone in the world would have seen what I saw if you put it up in front of an audience. Like, this movie's going to work. But everyone had seen the movie. Everyone had passed on the movie. Everyone and their mother had the DVD of the movie. So when Jason Blum called and said, "Hey, I think this movie's really work," they say, "You're cute. It's not going to work," and goodbye. I made a deal with Oren. I don't know how much you want to shorthand this. You can ask me what you want, but I'll just go to the DreamWorks part. Okay. DreamWorks, who is taking my phone calls, pays a little bit of attention to me, which is the only reason that Paramount wound up with Paranormal, and I got them their $5 million back, to say nothing of another about $250 million, is because of DreamWorks, 100%.
Adam Goodman, who then goes over to Paramount.
Well, but wait. So Adam and DreamWorks are the only ones who say, "Jason, you're wrong. There's no business in the movie. But I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll pay you $250,000 and we're going to remake the movie. And I said, you have to let Oren direct, or I can't sell that to him. And they said, well, let Oren direct. And this is, I'm condensing a lot of time, but basically I got them. Sundance wouldn't take the movie. I went to Slam Dance. I got everyone again to try and come to the screening. No one showed up. The screening was in a fucking barn, like some broken speaker. And I shopped the movie to death. And I sat at a table with Oren, and this was I give myself a lot of credit for this. And I said, Oren, look, I thought I could do this. The deal that I made with Oren is I was going to get a certain percent after he had like $500,000, so it wasn't going to cost him any money unless I was really successful. Back to my other thing. I don't want to take a fee. I want to take a commission, right? So I said, Oren, look, we got one last chance, and here's what it is. I said, I know we have this $150,000 straight-to-video offer. I'm suggesting you not take it, and here's what I'm suggesting you do. Take the $250 from DreamWorks. I know, and you know, Oren, they're never going to remake the movie. Clearly, you can't remake Paranormal Activity. What are you going to put famous people in a found footage movie? It makes no sense.
Right.
But let me write in the contract with DreamWorks that they have to, once they've landed on a writer to rewrite it, right, they have to test screen the film in front of 400 people in Burbank, right, like a real preview.
Wow.
And they have to invite the writer or the writers, if there are a couple people
watch
up,
it,
to see what parts to keep and to let go.
Holy shit. That's awesome, Jason. That is so fucking smart.
That was smart. And that was the only way I could get anyone to see it with an audience.
Wow.
4 months goes by. Stacey Snider, Adam, and Ashley are at the screening, and me and Oren are there. And Oren is like, well, terrified they're going to actually engage him to remake this movie. And that's one thing I knew, not because I just had seen it with an audience that no one else would.
Right.
Movie ends. Stacey Snider's at the end of the movie pitching the 30-second TV spot. It's going to be a wide release DreamWorks movie. Done.
Amazing.
And it was one of the great nights of my career. I remember it till this day. Steven Schneider was super involved in this too. He was the horror guy who was put with me at Paramount. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, he was really the one who introduced me to horror and was very involved in this whole thing as well. And anyway, Steven and Oren and I just felt great. And DreamWorks was releasing the movie, and there was this famous story about Steven seeing the movie the next day, which is true. Steven saw the movie. I never met Steven Spielberg at that point, but he saw the movie. His movie's tested great. Right. He had the research. He saw the movie. He's like, "This is great." He gave it to Stacey in a plastic bag. He said, "Get rid of it," or gave it to Adam in a plastic bag. "Get rid of this. We're putting it on the schedule," and we were good to go. Except that DreamWorks and Paramount were breaking up.
Wow.
So then there was a whole other saga. I don't know how much you want to get me into
but
I don't want to get into that except to say that Paramount unwittingly wound up with the movie for that reason.
You've been definitely on the record for all that stuff. So let's fast forward.
Boring.
That's not boring. It's just you've been on the record. So fast forward because this is the stuff that really gets me going.
Yes.
How the hell do you not just say, I'm going to – and by the way, Brian Lord called Donna. Donna wanted to make – horror movies. Brian Lord once again goes, you should meet Jason Blum.
Right.
And you start to create this company.
Save my ass again.
Tell me how you came up with the idea for this, the way you make these movies. It's so entrepreneurial, so smart. How did you pitch? Did you have that idea before you met with Donna?
Totally.
Okay, so
we were doing it already. I'd already done it with Insidious.
So you knew because of what happened with Paranormal how much money you could make if you were betting on yourself. As you said, you don't want to take a fee. You want to bet on yourself. So you had already started this formula.
The answer to your question, I would answer it in a kind of roundabout way.
Please.
The reason that I came up with the model that we came up is because Paranormal happened to be when I was 37 and not 22. Mm-hmm. So as you know, in this business, when you're older and you have a big success, you're wise enough to realize any big success in the movie business has to do with lots of people, not just you.
Yep.
So I was able not to I was able because of my age not to let it go to my head. And I think what everyone said to do is, now you got to make World War Z. You got to make a more expensive movie.
Take your fee.
And I had the kind of wherewithal to say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I've seen so many people have success and try something else and fail. I had a big success with this Paranormal Activity movie. I'm sticking in my zone. My zone was low budget, back end, filmmaker has final cut. Like, I want to stay in my zone. And And luckily, the whatever that it worked. So it wasn't like I did it 3 other times. It didn't work. Insidious, Sinister, The Purge.
Well, you're also coming off a time where horror movies were super bloated. Like they were trying to make movies for like 35
million.
Yeah, exactly. So you were coming off a time where
and cutting the
That's great.
And cutting the market.
How did you get the scripts? Like
the scripts of all of our movies are never scripts that anyone wants to make.
I know, but did you still have the 3 executives sitting in those big luxurious offices, or did
No. Wait a second.
I know the deal ends.
Okay.
I know.
Yeah.
Did the
executives
execs go away? So it's
of
just
course.
you at this point.
Yeah, it was me and Ellen Goldsmith Vane.
Wow.
She gave me an office in her office at Gotham.
Amazing.
She gave me an office, and then Emma gave me a little office after I did Ellen gave me the office at Gotham, and then I did the Tooth Fairy, and then Emma Watts gave me a tiny little office in the Die Hard building. But it was hilarious.
God, Nakatomi Plaza.
Yeah, Nakatomi. But no way. I went from 7 offices in Hollywood to in this huge Paramount to like this closet in that building.
Jason,
it's kind of amazing.
I had an office in that building.
No,
I swear to God,
incredible.
It's insane.
Did you have a deal at Fox?
No, I didn't. That's a long story. I had a guy who I consulted for his company, and he had a little office there. Same thing.
Wow.
I went in there right after my Revolution deal ended.
Amazing. That's where you were.
I guess that's where we all go to die or not die.
We go to be reinvented.
We reinvented ourselves.
I got my paranormal check, my first check in that office. I remember
that's
that.
So
it was
great.
cool. I took a picture.
So then you've decided this. You've decided this model's going to work, and had you already gotten Insidious and Purge set up at Universal?
No, Insidious was next. The first deal we had after Paranormal was from Alliance. It's Charles Layton who runs the company now, who's my partner, does the business of the company. But Charles was running Alliance, and Alliance had Paranormal in their territories in the UK, Spain, and territories, and Canada,
not to be confused
with studios. And he made an offer to make for Stephen Orn and I to make 5 $1 million movies, and the first one we did was Insidious, and then we made all 5. We made The Bay with Barry Levinson. We made Insidious. We made Sinister, Paranormal, and
this is all before you made it the Universal deal.
Yes. So we filled up the 5. We made a Catherine Hardwicke movie called Plush. And we made a Jay Chandrasekhar movie called Baby Makers. They were all low-budget movies. Plush and Baby Makers were outside of horror, so we quickly learned that it really doesn't work very well.
Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. But low budget. They were all the same. And then I was renegotiating with Alliance, and it wasn't exactly like I wanted. And that's when Donna and Brian had that lunch. Yeah.
And why 10 years?
That was the second deal. The first deal was not 10 years.
What was the first deal?
3 years.
And then why 10?
If it ain't broke, right? It's going great. It's a terrific partnership. Of 30 movies, we've had 1 not work. I'd stay for 100 years.
I see a trend here with you. You do, at your heart, want a home and want a place to be. You wanted to be a Paramount. That was your dream to make studio movies your own way, which you absolutely have done.
Yeah, I did. Yes, I did.
It's an unbelievable partnership. And I see you with Whiplash. I see you even with Get Out and Split going back to those roots of those independent movies for sure.
Yeah.
And I know the Halloween rights was a huge coup for you because it's your old company. And so what is your pitch? Tell me your pitch. If I'm a filmmaker coming into you, and you may not even do the pitch anymore. I'm sure you have 50 people to do it. But if you were going to give me the pitch as a young filmmaker who wants to come do a movie with you, what is your pitch?
First of all, probably you're not that young because my pitch really is the company, the fit works much better for a director. I'd rather have a director who's had a couple of hits and a couple of misses than a Sundance director who's like got the great hot new movie. Like that's my nightmare for me, right? So really, my pitch is I've admired a movie or 2 or 3, whatever in the director's body of work. And my perfect pitch is when I'm talking to a director who's kind of been kicked around a little bit by the studio system. The frustrating thing for filmmakers like ourselves and for directors is you do what the studio wants, the movie fails, and then we get blamed, and the director really gets blamed. So I say to the director, look, here's your chance at proving you were right. Right? So how do I do that? The movie has to fit in these certain parameters, which it has to be $5 million. But as long as it's $5 million, you have final cut, You have final. We don't have to cast the movie for like who's good in Bulgaria. Like you have final. We can cast all unknowns. You have total creative control over kind of every aspect of the movie, and but there's no distribution, no guaranteed distribution. It's not like a pilot, so it won't disappear. It'll definitely come out. It might come out on TV only. It might come out on 1 screen, 1,000 screens, or 3,000 screens.
Depending on the testing.
Depending on the testing, yeah. So it's your chance to really and truly bet on yourself. And what I always say is you can't ask someone to bet on yourself and tell them what to do. So you have to. I can't promise you a hit, but you're going to live or die on your own sword. That's what I would say. The result of that pitch is that what I have found is that when you relinquish control to your director, the creative collaboration that we have with our directors is way more.
Oh, sure.
Than they would have with a studio or anyone else, because the director knows that they have control.
Especially if you're picking people who have had success and failure, because they're not just going to say, I'm going to die a final cut, go away. They're going to ask for
advice
because they know that it's a collaborative medium as well.
Yeah, and it's not a perfect system. It's backfired badly 2 times, but if your gambles are $5 million, the company can sustain that. If you were making $200 million movies, it wouldn't work. You two times it didn't work, we'd be shut down.
Well, especially now that you have $4 billion worth of gross under your belt. Just
that helps.
FYI.
That helps.
So you know what it feels like to me? It's interesting as you were pitching. You're pitching to yourself growing up. Like
I am.
You are. You're pitching. I don't want to be your therapist right now, but the pitch is to you.
Yes,
you're saying, hey,
bet
man,
on yourself.
Bet on yourself.
Yeah.
This is what you got to do. Don't take the fee. I know you've had some ups and downs.
Yeah.
I'm going to return your phone call. I'm going to fucking listen to you. I'm going to relinquish control to you. Mm-hmm. You just give me respect back.
I believe
That's amazing, dude.
Yeah, it is. It is. My therapy and my business are very interconnected.
Well, then your therapist, brother, you may want to just plug your therapist to get the success you've had. So I always ask this: best day of your Blumhouse company, best day. They just first
professional day, because obviously kids,
obviously family and all that. Best professional day of the Blumhouse.
The night of that paranormal.
That's
screening.
fucking great, isn't it?
The night that movie.
Where you just know.
I just felt like, and it's funny, by the time that screening happened till when it took much longer than I thought, but I felt that I'd finally, I'd been slugging away, and I'd finally got something that was really going to work. Now, what I didn't know was going to be 2 more years or 3 more years from that point until it actually did.
Right.
Thank God I didn't know, because I would have given up, but that was it.
You needed to be kicked around, because that type of bet only comes from a guy who has just had the door slammed in his face a million times and nobody will return his phone call. To have that doggedness and stay with it and have the thought of, well, it, I'll trick him into doing that screening. It's so great, man.
Yeah.
And now going back
Not
to
the worst day?
No. We can if you want.
Not really.
By the way, for me as an independent producer, it's like Wednesdays and Fridays and some Sundays. So you're a young guy and you're living in New York and you don't really know anything, but you have this burning fire and you've seen The Wizard of Oz today. Jason, what advice do you have for that kid right now with all of the knowing everything you know and knowing you've produced 139 movies on IMDb?
Jesus Christ.
I know. Knowing,
terrifying.
seeing all this, because you've seen them all, and not all of them were releases, you were said, to 2,000 screens. What's the advice you give for that young kid? Because he's not going to necessarily walk into your company and be the young guy, I know what I'm doing. How does he succeed?
As a filmmaker?
Or as a producer, as a filmmaker? Just,
I always say the thing that we didn't have when we were growing up, but that they have now is you gotta don't wait for the business. This ties into what I was saying before. Don't wait for permission to do stuff. Do stuff. Take your phone out, get an editing program on your phone, write a story that involves people your own age, shoot it in your studio apartment, and if we know this, if you make 50 shorts, one of them's going to be good,
right.
And if one of them isn't good and you made 50, maybe it may be time to think about something else,
exactly.
Right? But if you really make 50 shorts that you don't phone in, but that you really try and make 50 or 100 shorts or whatever, one of them's going to get a little traction online, and you're going to be much better at the end of making 100 than you were at the beginning. And that's the biggest thing, is don't wait for the industry to validate you.
Well, you found Paranormal Activity, which cost $15,000 to make.
Yeah, right.
And so
Right.
There is a guy out. If you're that young filmmaker that's making something for $15,000, there is a guy in a big fucking studio lot that's not getting any traction anywhere that's going to find you.
That is definitely true. That is the quality. We all know that quality rises. I always say that to writers. One of my things that I love about Hollywood is that, and about the movie business particularly, is that a great script, more often than not, it gets made.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it takes 20 years, but if the script is great, somehow it finds a way to the screen,
Yeah.
which is fun.
Well, Franklin Leonard just did a TED Talk. He runs the Blacklist,
sure,
and
I
he
know
was
Franklin,
just going down the crazy stats from the Blacklist of the Academy Awards, the grosses, all the movies they've had made, because all of us voted, and those were the good scripts that were around town. So and great scripts, as you say, rise to the top. I also think, and I don't want to. We sort of briefly mentioned it. I do think one of the best pieces of advice that I've read, and I've been doing this a long time, is your thing of don't get caught up in the genre. Don't just go, I'm going to make a scary movie. It doesn't have to have a story. I'm just going to do jump scares.
That's a disaster.
Or I'm going to do a comedy. It's not going to have a story or heart. It's just going to be a bunch of guys falling down and get kicked in the nuts.
Well, that's a disaster.
Your advice of making it be something that would be at the Sundance Film Festival or would be nominated for Academy Award regardless of the genre is great. Yeah. Great advice.
You always have
you're
to
a very smart man.
You always have to tell a great story.
Thank you, brother.
Wow,
this
that was so fast.
I know. I could tell you. We could
Did
do.
I laugh?
Did
the Paranormal Story? Was it too long?
No, you're amazing.
Sure?
You're amazing, brother.
Right.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, bye.